Hey everybody, welcome to Deep Dish, the show where I take a deep dive into a dish I've never made before, and hopefully we learn to cook it together. And today we're going to have a little fun with a game I'm calling Recipe Roulette, where I'm going to take a cookbook from the shelf, and then using a random number generator, we'll pick a page out of this cookbook and cook something from that page. The only rules are, it has to be something I haven't made before, I have to be able to get the ingredients locally, and I have to be able to finish this by dinner time. But it's 7 a.m., so that shouldn't be a problem. So let's get started. For this episode, I'm using the Complete America's Test Kitchen TV show cookbook from 2016. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful, but there's actually a couple of reasons why I picked this book. Number one, this thing is massive. It's got all the recipes from that program through 15 seasons, so it should be pretty fun to see what we pull out of here. Also, I generally find their recipes to be pretty accessible, so nothing too complicated or too exotic, so I should be able to easily find the ingredients here in town and make this dish. The last recipe is on page 961. So now let's bring in our generator and see what I'm gonna cook today. We'll enter a maximum of 961. Then hit generate. 211. Let's see what we got. $211 slow cooker pork loin. Oh man, you guys know how I feel about pork loin. It is not positive, but let's see what we got. So I'm going to need a 4.5 to 5 pound boneless pork loin roast. That should be easy enough to find. Some salt and pepper, some vegetable oil, 1 can of whole berry cranberry sauce, half a cup of dried cranberries, a half a cup of juice, and 3 3-inch long strips of zest from an orange, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now, that sounds pretty festive. So I will tie up and sear that pork, and then essentially just mix everything else into the slow cooker and plop that baby in there. Well, it couldn't be much more simple or straightforward than that. It's almost like one of those dump meals you see on late night TV. So now I'm gonna head out to the grocery store and see about picking this stuff up. Come on, Luna. Well, it turns out it was very easy to find all these ingredients at my local small town grocery store. And I'll tell you, the first thing that's good about this recipe is that it is very inexpensive. I got a 4.5 pound pork loin and the other ingredients here all for around $12, and that's going to make a tremendous amount of food for that price, so a really good value. So I've got my pork loin and some nice pre-cut pieces of butcher's twine that are maybe 15 inches long, and I'll just slide that under and tie these around. I like to actually wrap this over a couple of times, and that way when I snug this up, it'll stay, and I don't have to worry about holding that in place with my finger when I tie my second knot over the top. Just like that. And then I'll do one of these around every inch or inch and a half. I didn't trim this pork loin because, in my opinion, that fat cap is the best tasting part of this thing. My disdain for this cut of meat is well documented, and that's just because it's real easy to dry out and it's just kind of tough. So the last thing you want to do is overcook it. Just trim those ends up. And now I've got a nice tight package that'll cook up a lot more evenly. And the next step is to season this with salt and pepper and then sear it all around. Now, one thing that's going to help you get a nice sear on any piece of meat is to get that thing as dry as you can before you go to searing it. So really go after this with some paper towels or a kitchen towel and get as much of that moisture off of there as you can. And now I'll hit this pretty liberally with some salt all around. It's a big thick piece of meat, so I'll go pretty generous on that salt. And now I'll do the same thing with some fresh cracked black pepper. Now I got my skillet heating up over medium-high heat. I'll throw in a couple of tablespoons of vegetable oil or other high-temp oil. And when that starts to get a little shimmery, I'll toss this guy in there. Now you can see it's a little shimmery, maybe a tiny bit of smoke coming off there, and it's time to throw this guy in there. I want to make sure to get oil all around underneath that guy. That's what's going to give me a nice crust. That's been 2 minutes on the first side. Let's see how it looks. That looks perfect. So, again, make sure you pick up oil all over the bottom of that thing when you flip it, so you get that nice golden color. Now, I'm sure you can totally skip this step and just throw this all in the crock pot and head out for 4 hours. But getting a nice sear on here is going to add a nice extra level of flavor. There we go. Now, that looks aces. So, I'll set that aside. We'll get out the slow cooker and put this together. So we'll go by the book here. And I need 3 strips of lemon zest. So, I want to try and go real shallow. Not get any of the white part here. Just about like that. Toss in 3 of those. Very good. Now, we'll put the juice from that orange in there. No seeds to worry about, so we'll just get it right in there. We're looking for a half cup. And I'm gonna have to get 1 more orange for that. That'll do. Now let's get in there with that delicious cranberry sauce. Oh boy, there it goes. I'll just break that up, stir it around a little bit. Now I don't have any fresh ground cinnamon around, so I'm just gonna use a really little piece of cinnamon stick here. And that should be about equivalent of the 1/8 teaspoon of pre-ground. Alright. Now is just to nestle our pork loin in there. Fatty side up. There we go. Set that to low. And we are off and running. So, second good thing about this recipe, extremely easy to put together. Oops, I nearly forgot. Recipe calls for a half a cup of dried cranberries. I imagine that's going to add some much needed tartness because there's a lot of sugar in that cranberry sauce. Okay. Ow. It's only been about 2.5 hours, but this is a bit of a smaller roast than recipe calls for. So I've been monitoring it here with my instant read, and it's at 144 to 145, and that is as high as I want to go. I want to make sure that this is nice and rosy in the middle still. So I'm going to take that out, put it on a platter to rest, and now I'm going to get this sauce into a little saucepan and reduce it down until it gets nice and thick. Now I'm just going to put this over on the stovetop over like medium heat and let it simmer down for 5 or 10 minutes until it gets kind of thick. And that'll give plenty of time for this roast to rest. Feels nice and juicy. I've seen people cook these pork loins, you know, in the style of like a pulled pork where it's shredding apart. And boy, by that time, it is just sawdust. Nasty stuff. Now I'll just loosely pop a piece of foil over there until the sauce is ready. Oh, my sauce is reduced down and thickened up real nice. Recipe called for reducing that down to about 2 cups of liquid, and I think that's right about where we are. Give it a quick taste. That's pretty darn good. Just a little sprinkling of salt there. And now, we'll ladle this right over the top of that loin. Well, that's quite nice. So, this thing is nice and rested, and I am going to cut in to kind of the thickest part here and take a look at how we did. Again, I'm looking for a nice kind of rosy color. It feels nice and juicy. Oh yeah, pretty darn good. Let's take a look at that. Just a little pink, very moist still. All right, now I'll cut myself a slice of this and plate it up and see how we did. I nearly forgot. Now, that sweet and tangy sauce is a perfect match with this pork. I could see that on some duck as well. That would be really fantastic. But it does have that sort of holiday festive feel from that little hint of cinnamon and the orange peel. So, if you got any of those weird turkey haters in your life, this would be a fantastic option for Thanksgiving. But you gotta cook that turkey as well, of course. Overall, I would like a little fresh herb in here, specifically rosemary. I think a sprig of rosemary would really set this off. But for value and the ease of preparation, this is definitely a winner. Oh yeah. Well, the folks over at ATK do not disappoint. This is a pretty good preparation of a piece of meat that I consider to be pretty bad. But it's nice and moist, the sauce is really tasty, so definitely worth the time and effort. And I hope you get a chance to try this out, and make sure to check back often to see what we can learn on Deep Dish. Thanks for watching.